Hello. It's Kirk again. That means this is still Dumb Test Late for another week, another new idea. This time it's a new idea. And this episode is brought to you by this spicy kimchi ramen bowl I had that was probably a bad idea to eat before recording a podcast. But here we go. Now time for some interactive fun. Like I said, Kirk. I'm back with a new episode.
Wait, this time. Hang on. Hold on. Yeah. Something. Hold on.
Okay, I'm back. Did you like my little sci-fi sound effects, my duplicated sci-fi sound effects? Hope you did, because that was a hint to this week's idea. I know last episode, if you're listening to this in order, thank you. You're an angel. But last episode I mentioned I gave a content warning that the last episode was about spiders, and if that wasn't your thing, skip it. The next one I was going to talk about demons. I still am going to do the demon episode, but I'm not ready for that one yet. There's a new idea that popped up that I wanted to work on. For that demon one, it's still going. I'm currently reading The Exorcist. But I'll talk about that on the next episode. But this episode, like my sci-fi hint gave you, that I'm talking about a sci-fi idea about multiplication or doppelgängers or duplicates or multiverse, that kind of realm of sci-fi movie or story idea. But first, this is the podcast called Dumb Test Late. I'm still Kirk, where I come up with random ideas for movies and TV shows and stories from the random ideas I get while sitting bored in my office listening to way too gory true crime and also spooky podcast. Okay, so like I said, this is going to be a story about doppelgangers, multiple versions of yourself, the multiverse, and all that. So let's hop into it. One of the things I always wanted to do with this podcast, I have to have a theme. So the theme, or kind of not the theme, but the tone. The tone I want to set for this story creating, story developing, eventually storytelling podcast. The tone I want to set is for me to paint a picture with my words, because this is an audio format. Of course, you're listening to this. Thank you for listening. Did I mention you're an angel for listening? So I need to paint a picture with my words. The best way, or the easiest way for me to do that, is kind of in a metaphysical sense, which is probably the most complicated and backwards way of doing this, but it makes sense in my head. So, like I said, it's a multiverse, multiplication, doppelganger type story. So this is the out there metaphysical explanation of my idea to help paint a picture. Okay, it's going to get wild, but I'm going to hone it back in and bring it back to reality, as sci-fi reality. Okay, so if you imagine a asteroid or a meteorite, I can never remember what the difference is, but it's hurling towards a planet. It's a big hunk of rock. Sometimes it's ice, but think of a big hunk of rock hurling through space. And it's speeding up because it's being pulled close to a planet or a moon or something like that. So you have that image of the rock zooming towards, and it's heating up because of atmosphere and all that stuff. And there's pieces breaking off of it. So it's one piece, but the faster it goes throughout its life, or it's being pulled somewhere, it breaks off pieces. And those pieces are of that rock, were started of that rock, of that asteroid, of that meteorite, but they're now separate pieces because they fall off. So relate this to like the bubble theory of reality, where this isn't exactly the bubble theory, but this is how I take the bubble theory and the multiverse theory, that each decision you make, everything you do spawns off a different universe, a different dimension, a different bubble of you, like that asteroid, that meteorite hurling through space. Everything that happens to you breaks off a different version of yourself. So that main version, that one rock that started, is now broken up into multi billions versions of you in different dimensions and different realities. They were part of you if you were that rock that started out. But as time goes, as things change, you break up into multi-bubble versions of you, that tiny rock that broke away. And throughout time, you break up more and more and more. And the main thing of you, the main being of you, that rock, that asteroid, that meteorite, gets smaller and smaller and smaller into different split off version bubbles, smaller rocks of you until you're all gone. And that's life. In my multiverse that I'm creating, I hope that painted a good picture. Let me go back to it. So in my sci-fi doppelganger story, there's going to be many versions of you in different universes, in different dimensions, I should say. Let's say the same universe, but many versions in different dimensions. Every time something happens, a fork in the road or whatever, you're at the crossroads. You make a decision. If something happens to you, whatever, something might happen to someone else, but it affects you. A different version of you breaks off. You have all these smaller things of you until your life runs out. And then you all disappear over time because you all burn out, going back to the meteorite. So my story is going to be what happens where that smaller version of you realizes that they have broken off from the main thing, the main life source of you, and they want to get back and get the main life source because they're a smaller version of the main one. They're weaker, they're smaller, they have a shorter life, a lifespan, because they're a version of a version of a version of a version of you, the main one. So you're number one. And this smaller version is 6,700,000,000 and all that stuff. It's a smaller version. And once it's that full life force back, the only way it could do it is to bump into another version of itself and then take over that smaller version. And then that smaller version gets bigger. And then it bumps into another version that was once smaller, gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you have this life force growing behind the main life force and has to catch up with the meteorite that's falling. And the only way it could do it is to encapsulate it, to suck up its original life force, to become its own bigger life force. And if that confused you, it's okay. I'm sorry. I confuse myself sometimes. So that's the metaphysical story, the metaphysical picture I'm painting for this story. So let's bring it back down to reality. So as close to reality as I can get in this sci-fi story. There's going to be multiple versions of my character, and they don't know that. And I'll talk about my fears of me coming up with this idea, and it's already been done a million times. I'll get to that a little later. But my character unwittingly doesn't know that there's this bubble universe. There's multi versions of themselves that look exactly like them, but they're, maybe they're differently dressed or something like that. It's not like, multiverse in Marvel comics and all that stuff where there's different versions of you, because no, it's the same human version of yourself. You may, this one you might have got injured, or this one you might wear glasses now, or this one, you got a tan or whatever. You might be injured, whatever. So my character, let's say the hero is just an ordinary person on Earth you would see and recognize. The villain is going to be an alternate version of them, the dark version of them, the darkest timeline version of them. So time in this thing is going to be, I talked about this on previous episodes. This is all-encompassing thing of time being not a line, not something that there's a past, present, and future. Everything is going on at the same time. It's multidimensional. The past is one dimension. The future is one dimension. The present is one dimension. They're all going around at the same time. Think of like triangles stacked up next to each other, making a circle. Standing up or around each other, making a circle. They're going around at the same time. So the evil person in this is going to be the version of my character that figures all this out and they figure out the door, they figure out the back room, they figure out the key to jump back to their other dimensional selves and basically kill them in other dimensions, which basically makes them stronger. It's like you take back over your split off life force that's been split billions of times, but each time the evil character does this, it makes them stronger and stronger and stronger. So they have to do this many many times to basically get this life force back, so they are strong enough then to their original one. And then so you have that going on. This evil character is basically jumping through timelines, killing themselves, making themselves stronger and stronger and stronger. Maybe not killing themselves. Let's not say that. Doing something to maybe take over their life force. And in that, like they say that, let's say they take over that life force in that bubble that's separated. When they do that, it basically ends that timeline. But they could jump to the next one, just jump to the next one, jump to the next one as they encapsulate. Let's say that. So we have you see an evil character doing that. But then, of course, there's one also version of yourself, of the character that figures out what's going on. So they basically have to jump to the timeline in order to catch this character. But it's, millions, billions, or let's say 100 of them. There's 100 bubbles that have been split off from this one main character. So you have the evil one encapsulating all these other bubbles to get powerful, and the other one hopping to try to catch them. So you have the current day where this conflict is going to happen. That's where the story kind of starts. So let's back up again, because I love to confuse my listeners as long as I confuse myself sometimes. That's the setup for the story. Hopefully I didn't confuse you too much. So my real life inspirations for this, let's go to that. So doppelganger folklore. I've heard so many stories about this. One of the main doppelganger folklores is that if you see yourself, it's a bad omen. That your doppelganger is there to abduct you, or it's an omen of a future death. In like seeing double is an omen of your death. Norse, I'm going to take from that folklore, doppelganger folklore. In Norse mythology, they have one that's similar. From what I read, it's kind of the easiest way to explain it is like a reverse deja vu. Reverse deja vu, where you see yourself, but you're doing something that you'll do in the future, or other people will see you do something that you'll end up doing in the future. So there's all these time jumps. That's the thing with, people will say it's time traveling. But like I said, in the setup, the dimensions are going on at the same time. The past and the present and the future are going on at the same time as well. And these bubble universes. So time could get distorted and all that stuff. That's why I like that mythology. So it's because it's kind of related to the other real life true story that I'm borrowing from or getting inspiration from. There's this real true life story, unsolved mystery of this person named David Glenn Lewis. It was a man who lived in Texas. I believe this was in the 80s or the 70s. After a quick Google, 90s, 93. So he lived in Texas, Amarillo, Texas. And the last time he was seen was like on a Friday. His wife went out of town or something, so he was alone. But he had a class. He was teaching a class or something like that. He worked on Friday. But then mysteriously on Monday, I think it was Monday, like 3 days later, Monday or Tuesday, he was found walking down a highway road in Washington State, which is like 1,500 miles away from where he lives, where he was known, where he should have been in Texas. He was wearing clothes that he supposedly didn't own. And when somebody noticed him, they turned around to, figure out what he was doing. He was hit by a car. It was a hit and run, and he died. And it's an unsolved mystery because nobody can figure out how people saw him in Texas on Friday, supposedly on the weekend. And then all of a sudden he ended up in this mysterious place where he's never been before in Washington State, Yakima, I think it was. he had no business being there, and all of a sudden he's hit by a car. Nobody ever confesses, or they never find the car, and he just dies there. And it's so strange. This is unsolved mystery. So I heard this on a podcast, of course, and my mind went crazy. And that was the first thing that made me want to jump to this multiverse story. So using that as a real world inspiration, my character is going to be this person who unfortunately passed away, rest in peace. But I'm going to use this idea where this multiverse happened to him. One of his evil bubbles that, in a separate split off universe was going back and collecting the life force from the split off versions of themselves. And they got to, let's say this is the last one where this person passed away. They were found on this random highway, 1,500 miles from where they should have been. There were also witnesses that said they saw him running through the airport, but then like going to a plane that was going to LA. It's a crazy story. Look it up if you ever want to be totally intrigued by a mysterious story. And that's the other thing. When they said the witnesses saw him in the airport, that's going to, while at the same time, other witnesses saw him like in a parking garage by his job. So that's why I was thinking about this multiverse of an evil version of you trying to get back to the main life force. Let's say his timeline or his dimension was the main one, and the evil one was close enough. So the evil one and the good one, or the one that's trying to save the day, is chasing the evil one. They know what's going on, but this main timeline, let's say, to make it easy, because I'm already confusing you. Sorry. In this, where this person, David Glenn Lewis, ends up, dying 1,500 miles away he's supposed to be. So taking from that Norse mythology where you see your doppelganger do something, or witnesses see you do something that you're going to do later on, like time gets all messed up and warped and all of that. So we have multi versions of this character. That's why there's a bunch of witnesses saying they saw him in multiple places. And the reason I was going to use kind of his untimely death at the side of the road, that in the end, I'm jumping to the end of my story. He's convinced that he has to basically eliminate himself as a sacrifice. And that will, the one that was found at the side of the road by the hit and run, that was the evil one. Something happened when he got tricked to going to this place, and then he was basically killed or taken out by himself as a sacrifice to basically, let's say, save the universe, to make it easy, because you always got to save the universe in these sci-fi stories, sci-fi action stories. And I'm gonna leave that one alone because I know it's confusing enough. But I have another smaller real world pronunciation, real world inspiration. It's from the story called The Mad Trapper of Rat River. This happened in the 1930s in the wilderness in Canada. There was somebody who was being hunted for like days and days in the super cold wilderness of Canada, and they kept escaping capture. They were like really good shooting. They were doing stuff like climbing the face of a mountain, which they thought no one could do, and all this stuff. But he was eventually killed after this long chase. He was doing all these superhuman things. It found out like when he was killed, they found out like he had scoliosis and he barely had any food on him. He was super skinny because it's the Canadian wilderness and he's being hunted. He couldn't like start a fire and camp and anything like that. And they're so confused because no one knew his, even to this day, they don't know his true identity. But people kept coming forward after he was killed, they put a picture out of him to try to figure out who he was. But a bunch of people from different places said, they knew who he was. And he was like a World War I veteran. There was another person that said he was an outlaw from like the North and the Dakotas. Then there's also one that said he was this outlaw or this fugitive from Sweden. So that's another thing that's going to go to kind of the mythology of my story. Or the inspiration for my story, that he was so powerful and did all these crazy things because he took over split off versions of himself. That's why he could do all these things, climb this mountain while, no one could really do, and survive in these really cold Canadian wilderness elements, because they don't realize he is this crazy super version of himself, because he took over a split off version of himself, made himself more powerful, and he's evil. So that's why when he was killed, they realized he's so skinny and he's a weak version of himself. He went back to being just a single weak version of himself. He lost all that life power that was gaining by taking over other versions of himself. That's another real life inspiration that'll come up with this story. Those are the two real life ones. David Glenn Lewis, which is a really mysterious and interesting story that really kicked off in my head about doing this multiverse story. So that was super confusing, and I'm going to find a way to make it not. I'm going to narrow it down because I like this idea. So, top 2 movie inspirations. My biggest worry was that we come up with this idea in my head to do the podcast. I was worried that this was already done in the movie. I always worry about that. But like main ones were the movie Us, which I literally sat here and read a synopsis and spoiler and breakdown of the movie. So I didn't. That movie has to do with doppelgängers, and it seems like a really good movie, but I really can't watch horror movies. But it's my idea is different. Also, Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I mean, Marvel has a bunch of different multiverse stuff going on, but mine is hopefully a bit different. There's that amazing movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, or something like that. That's an amazing movie. But that one, they're jumping from different dimensions and versions of themselves, but it's not like there's multiple ones running around in one dimension or one timeline or whatever. So I think I strayed enough away from that. There's also this movie called Cam. There's this movie called Lost Highway that's, I think, a doppelganger movie or has that theme, but I think it goes way into a different territory I still want to see. But yeah, hopefully I strayed enough away from stuff, because there is a movie called Doppelganger. I don't think it was that like famous, or it might be an indie movie or something like that I actually do want to see, because it's basically like these college students realize that there's another dimension, another version of themselves that they end up meeting. But I'll look that up and see how it goes. Hopefully I haven't tread on any other person, writer, director, creator's foot with my idea. It was too confusing anyway. I'm sorry for being so confusing with this one. It's kind of an out there story. I really want to write something kind of come up with my own mythology or my own crazy sci-fi story, not just go off of stuff that's already been done. That's why it sounds so confusing, because it's all jumbled up in my head. But I will, it's rumpled up and all crazy. I'll iron it out and smooth it out. And for the next episode, like I said, if you listen to this, you're an angel. As I said previously, I want to do at least 2 episodes per idea. This is the first episode for this idea. So I will come back to this one for the next one. And then if I do just another one, the next one after that will be my demon story. Hopefully I'm done reading The Exorcist by then. And whatever other idea pops into my head. But that's my doppelganger, multiplicity, multiverse, everything, all everywhere, all at once story. My title is the first thing that popped in my head before doing this episode. It's called You and You. And that sounds like a romantic comedy, but maybe this will turn into a romantic. Who knows? Who knows how ideas first come out? It's always funny listening to podcasts and stories and the making of behind the scenes of the original story idea when scripts get started, and then when they get bought or when they get picked up and greenlit, how much they change. It's always funny to listen to this. So maybe this will be who knows what this will turn into, but I will iron it out and smooth it out and make it more understandable for the next episode. That's my promise. But yeah, I'll end it there because I'm still Kirk. This is still Dumb Test Late. We're still working on ideas. We're still getting through to 2025. Hope you're being nice to yourself. I'm going to calm down because I need to smooth out their ideas. Hope you're doing the same. Hope you're living good. Hope you're treating yourself good. Hope you're treating other people good. Be nice to each other. Love each other. Okay. Goodbye. Bye.